Detroit made its moves, and when that happens, it's because something big is coming. Nothing the team did this week was casual. Every decision shows exactly how seriously the Lions are treating this moment in the season. So let's get straight to it. What these changes reveal, why they matter, and how they impact the huge showdown against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday night. And if you're a true Lions fan, drop a like and comment below if you've been supporting this team for more than 50 years. I want to see the fans who inspire the new generation. Right away, Detroit is shaking in a way that every Lions fan can feel, because this week the team didn't just make routine adjustments. They made moves that say a lot about how seriously they're treating this moment in the season. And if you've been following this team closely, you already know nothing happens in Allen Park without a purpose. So let's break down exactly what these changes tell us, why they matter, and what they reveal about where this team is mentally heading into one of the biggest matchups of the year. The first move hits directly at a position that has quietly become the heartbeat of this offense. With Sam Laporta dealing with a back issue and missing back-to-back practices, the Lions didn't hesitate. They went out and signed veteran tight end Anthony Firkser, a 30-year-old who spent last season bouncing between the Jets and the Chiefs. This isn't a flashy headline, but it's a clear message. They cannot afford to be thin at tight end right now. Brock Wright can step into that second tight end role, but Laporta's impact goes so far beyond basic production. His presence affects coverage, spacing, route distribution, and the way defenses commit resources. When Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams are already drawing increased double teams, losing Laporta would alter the entire structure of the passing game. So the front office acted fast, because games like the one coming up against Philadelphia don't wait for players to heal. But the most fascinating development this week is actually on the defensive line. Over the past few games, something subtle but telling has happened. Roy Lopez has been playing more and more snaps, while first-round pick Tyreek Williams has been playing fewer, and defensive coordinator Shepard finally addressed it. The explanation? Frank Ragnow, during his retirement, mentioned that Lopez was the toughest nose tackle he faced last season that stuck with Shepard. He wanted Lopez in Detroit because of that comment, and now that Lopez is here, you can see why. He isn't the biggest, he isn't the most athletic, he isn't the next Shawn Rodgers, but he gets into the backfield constantly. He disrupts plays, he wins leverage, he plays violently, and when a coach starts trusting you in those dirty snaps inside, you've earned it. That rotation is suddenly becoming one of the Lions' most underrated strengths. DJ Reader, Aleem McNeil, Roy Lopez, Tyreek Williams, 4 guys who can rotate through and keep pressure high in the middle. It gives this defense layers instead of cracks. And yes, Tyreek Williams' snap count last week, only 8 snaps, is surprising, especially because he hasn't made glaring mistake. But Aleem McNeil returning changes the balance, and right now, the staff is simply playing the hot hand. Lopez is that hand. Injury-wise, there's some relief sprinkled in with the nerves. Aiden Hutchinson and Penei Sewell sat out Wednesday, but returned Thursday, which looks like normal maintenance. But Laporta, Kirby Joseph, and Terrion Arnold weren't spotted on Thursday. Those are impact players at every level of the roster.
And heading into a primetime showdown with a team like the Eagles, every absence creates a ripple. Speaking of the Eagles, this matchup feels strange, because neither team has seen the other at full power in a long time. You look at Philadelphia and nothing jumps out as terrifying, yet they keep winning. Even when they mismanage the game late, they survive. There's almost a weird luck factor with them. But if Detroit plays a clean game, avoids the sloppy penalties, tackles well, and doesn't offer free possessions, it's hard to picture a scenario where they simply get outclassed. Discipline and execution will decide this. Special teams, though, has quietly become a real concern. Dave Phipp didn't sugarcoat anything. Low kicks from Bates getting blocked, kickoff coverage falling apart, return lanes disappearing, allowing opponents to flip the field too easily. This is the part of the game where cracks become disasters under primetime lights. If the Lions are giving up chunk field position every time a kick goes up, the Eagles will take advantage of that. And then there's the chess match in the passing game, with defenses doubling Amon-Ra St. Brown and even throwing extra attention at Jameson Williams on third downs. Laporta's availability becomes even more critical. Without him, someone else has to win those soft spot routes, the ones defenses usually can't cover while doubling 2 wide outs. Fans have been waiting to see more contested catch opportunities for Tesla downfield, and with the way this Eagles secondary plays, those back shoulder or 50-50 shots might show up. On the defensive side, the Lions need to avoid letting Jalen Hurts get comfortable with those exact same plays. You do not want single coverage back shoulder balls to A.J. Brown all game long. The key is zone coverage, forcing Hurts to read the field, process routes, and locate holes instead of just throwing ISO shots. This is one of those matchups where discipline and structure matter more than aggression. And as for Tyreke Williams, his snap count and PFF grade from Week 10 raise questions. It's just unusual to see such a drastic drop when he hasn't visibly struggled. But again, Allen returns, Lopez surges, and suddenly the room is loaded. It's a good problem, but a problem fans are watching closely. All of this builds towards Sunday night, a matchup that feels like a measuring stick for both teams. Detroit is healthier than last year, deeper than last year, smarter than last year, but the margin for error is razor thin. So now I want to hear from you. Based on these roster moves, the injuries, and the rise of Roy Lopez, how confident are you heading into this game? Picking up right where we left off, the story shifts from preparation to pressure, because now everything funnels into how Detroit responds when the lights hit, the crowd settles, and every flaw or strength gets exposed on national television. And when you look closely at what has been building inside this roster, you start to see a team that's evolving in real time. The moves this week weren't just reactions, they were signs of intent, signs of urgency, and signs that this coaching staff is not afraid to adjust, even if that means shifting snap counts, elevating unexpected contributors, or asking veterans to step in immediately. The Roy Lopez situation is the perfect example of this. Sometimes the NFL rewards raw talent, and sometimes it rewards the guys who simply refuse to lose a rep. Lopez has been that guy. Every snap looks like a lifeline for him, and when a coach sees that kind of effort on film, it's impossible to ignore. And the moment Frank Ragnow casually mentioned that Lopez was the toughest nose tackle he faced last season, it clearly planted a seed. What's remarkable is how quickly Lopez has translated that reputation into real production here. He isn't flashy. He won't run down a quarterback from behind. But he wins early in the play, and that's what gives a defensive line its teeth. A defensive tackle who consistently disrupts timing can change an entire drive, and right now he's providing exactly that in the rotational interior. Meanwhile, Tyreke Williams' reduced usage isn't a sign of regression as much as a reflection of how competitive this interior unit has become. When your defensive tackle group suddenly has 4 legitimate contributors, someone's snap count has to drop. Sometimes that's a rookie, but the long-term benefit is that Williams is learning in a room full of guys who play different styles: Reeder's power, McNeil's flexibility, Lopez's leverage, and his own explosiveness. The rotation has the potential to be the deepest Detroit has had in years, and they'll need all of it against Philadelphia's run-heavy, RPO-driven offense. As for the offense, the uncertainty around Sam Laporta continues to loom over this entire matchup. When Amon-Ra St. Brown is being doubled and defenses are starting to bracket Jameson Williams, the tight end position becomes the balancing weight for the entire system. Without Laporta, the Lions lose a mismatch creator who forces linebackers and safeties to widen their responsibilities. That's where Anthony Firkser's arrival matters more than fans think. He's not Laporta, but he's a smart veteran who understands spacing and timing. He gives Detroit a functional option instead of a void. And then there's the part nobody likes talking about: special teams. Detroit cannot afford another week of low kicks, shaky protection, or lanes collapsing on coverage. Dave Phipp rarely calls out issues publicly unless they're becoming patterns, and right now the patterns are trending the wrong way. In a game where field position may decide momentum, every yard will matter. The final layer is the strategy against Jalen Hurts. You can see the tension within Detroit's approach. They respect the fact that he wins games, but they also recognize his limitations in processing zone looks. When the Lions play tight man coverage, the danger increases, because the Eagles love quick isolation throws and 50-50 balls, especially to A.J. Brown. That's why this week feels like a potential shift in defensive identity. Play zone, force reads, eliminate freebies, and make the Eagles work their way down the field instead of gifting them sideline shots. This game is shaping up to be more than a measuring stick. It's a chance to prove that Detroit can adapt on the fly, overcome injuries, and control the small details that define playoff-caliber teams. And by now, fans know that these Lions aren't intimidated by expectations, they're fueled by them. So now I'll turn it back to you. After all these adjustments, concerns, and rising performances, what's your confidence level in Detroit taking care of business on Sunday night? And before you head out, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and check out the videos popping up on your screen right now. And as we push this conversation forward, there's something deeper happening with this Detroit team that fans can feel even without looking at the numbers. It's the sense that this roster has grown out of the hope and potential phase and stepped fully into the execution and expectation transition phase. Moves that once felt like gambles now feel like calculated steps. Depth that once felt fragile now feels layered. And every adjustment, from signing a veteran tight end to rebalancing the defensive line rotation, points to a front office and coaching staff that understands exactly what it takes to sustain success in November and beyond. Because right now, this team is not reacting emotionally. They're reacting strategically. Look at how they handled the injuries this week. No panic, no overcorrection, no unnecessary risks with key players in practice. They've seen what happens when a season derails because you push too hard too soon. This time, they're managing the roster with the awareness of a team that has been through the fire and learned from it. That's growth. That's maturity. And that's the kind of evolution that separates good teams from dangerous ones. What stands out most is how the identity of this defense keeps shifting week by week. Early in the season, it was about the edges. Then it became about the linebackers. Now we're watching the interior defensive line become the heartbeat of the entire unit. And that rise is happening without drama, without controversy, and without anyone demanding the spotlight. Lopez didn't ask for attention. He earned it. McNeil didn't return with excuses. He returned with impact. Williams didn't sulk after a drop in snaps. He kept battling. That's a championship-type room. This matters because Sunday night will be a test of grit, not just skill. Philadelphia isn't going to hand anything over. They're going to push, lean, and punch all game long. And Detroit's answer cannot just come from scheme. It has to come from depth, rotation, and the willingness to trust the guy next to you, whether he's a veteran signing stepping in on short notice or a rookie waiting for his moment to swing the game. Offensively, this matchup becomes a chessboard where every missing piece shifts the strategy. Without Laporta fully healthy, Jared Goff's comfort zones change. The timing routes change. The safety valves change. That's why the Lions' preparation this week has been so intense, because they know the Eagles' defense thrives when it forces quarterbacks into holding the ball just a half second longer than they want. The Lions counter that by spreading responsibility, leaning on their depth, and refusing to let the offense depend on a single player. That resilience has been the story of this team all season, and yet, the underlying tension remains. Detroit needs to be sharp on special teams. They cannot afford field position losses that hand the Eagles short drives. Every yard matters. Every lane matters. Every snap matters. The fact that the coaching staff is addressing these issues head-on tells you they're preparing for a game where details decide everything. So now the question becomes, can Detroit stitch all these pieces together under the brightest lights they've seen all year? Can they balance the injuries, the roster tweaks, the rising performances, and the pressure of a national stage in a way that turns all this preparation into statement-making football? Because this matchup isn't just another game, it's a chance to show the entire league that Detroit isn't climbing anymore. They've arrived. Because when you step back and look at all of this together, you start to see that the Lions are entering that rare space where the smallest choices start carrying the biggest consequences. Rotations matter. Snap counts matter. Who practices and who doesn't matters. And what separates real contenders from teams just trying to hang on is the discipline to make decisions that may not be popular in the moment but are right for the long-term mission. That's exactly what we're watching unfold. The rise of Roy Lopez didn't come with fanfare, but you can feel the shift every time he steps on the field. He changes the tone of the defensive interior, and that's the type of unexpected spark that great teams feed off late in the year. The coaching staff isn't prioritizing name recognition or draft pedigree, they're prioritizing impact. That's why his increased usage feels so meaningful. That's why Tyreek Williams being limited to 8 snaps isn't a criticism. It's a reflection of a unit adjusting week to week, opponent to opponent, moment to moment. It's tactical, not emotional. And that's exactly the kind of mindset they'll need in a matchup where even the smallest weakness gets magnified. That's why the injuries hanging over this week's practices feel so heavy. When guys like Sam Laporta, Kirby Joseph, and Terrion Arnold aren't on the field, it forces the staff to rethink combinations, roles, and assignments. And it forces the team to rely on preparation instead of comfort. That's the difference between beating a team like the Eagles and letting them dictate the game. The vulnerability in special teams adds another layer of tension. Those low kicks, the blocks, the open lanes on returns, those aren't things you can hide under the lights. Those are the mistakes that flip momentum instantly. The coaching staff calling it out publicly is a sign they understand the stakes. They know this game won't allow them to leave points or field position on the table. That transparency shows urgency, and urgency is exactly what this moment demands. All of it circles back to one central question. Is this Lions team finally ready to translate talent and depth into the kind of complete performance that defines true contenders? The answer won't come from one star or one matchup or one big play. It will come from the accumulation of all these decisions, from trusting the rotation on the defensive line, to adjusting for injuries on offense, to tightening up the discipline on special teams, to executing the defensive plan against a quarterback who thrives when you give him easy man matchups and free sideline throws. Everything is converging at once. The roster moves, the health updates, the defensive adjustments, the rising contributors, the matchup dynamics. It's all building toward a single moment where Detroit can either assert who they've become or fall back into old patterns. And that's exactly where I want to bring you in, Lions fans. After everything we've broken down, after every shift we've seen this week, after every adjustment and concern and rising performance, what do you believe this team is about to show the world on Sunday night? And as we push deeper into this build-up, there's a point where all the separate threads start tightening together. The injuries, the roster adjustments, the defensive rotation, the concerns on special teams, and suddenly you realize this isn't just a week of updates. It's a week that exposes exactly who the Lions are when everything around them gets uncomfortable. Because this team, right now, is being asked to respond without excuses. No one cares that key players missed practice. No one cares that the defensive line rotation looks different than expected. No one cares if the special teams unit has struggled the last few weeks. What matters is whether Detroit can treat these obstacles the same way they've treated every challenge during this rise, with composure, clarity, and a refusal to back down. Look at the defensive line situation again, because it tells you almost everything about the mindset of this coaching staff. Roy Lopez didn't earn more snaps because of hype or potential. He earned them because of production. Because when he's on the field, he disrupts the interior. He forces cutbacks. He wins leverage. He creates chaos where Detroit needs it most. And even though Tyreek Williams saw his snaps drop down to just 8 last week, that doesn't mean he's being left behind. It means the staff saw a combination that worked and leaned into it. It means they're prioritizing immediate impact over long-term projections. And that kind of adaptability is exactly what you need against a team like Philadelphia, where interior control often dictates the rhythm of the entire game. At the same time, the injuries hanging over this week create an entirely different kind of pressure. Sam Laporta, Kirby Joseph, Terrion Arnold, these aren't depth pieces. These are core contributors. Missing them, or even having them at less than full strength, forces the offense and defense to pivot. It forces Goff to adjust his reads. It forces the secondary to reshuffle communication. It forces the coaching staff to build contingency plans for situations they'd rather not face. And yet, this is where the Lions have grown the most. Last season, injuries broke their rhythm. This season, they've learned how to bend without breaking. But the one area they absolutely cannot afford to bend right now is special teams. Those low kicks from Bates, the blocks, the late arriving coverage on kickoffs, those are the kinds of details that get exposed immediately in prime time. And the fact that Dave Phipps spoke openly about them shows just how serious the staff is about fixing these issues. Because against a team like the Eagles, a blocked kick or a blown coverage lane is the difference between staying in control and chasing the game. And all of this builds toward the most unpredictable part of the matchup, how Detroit decides to defend Jalen Hurts. The temptation will always be to play man, because this defense thrives on aggression. But Hurts lives off those one-on-one back shoulder throws, those isolation moments where A.J. Brown turns into a cheat code. That's why this feels like a crossroads. If Detroit leans into zone, forces Hurts to read, forces him to identify soft spots instead of attacking matchups, they control the flow. If they go too aggressive too often, they risk giving up exactly the kind of plays Philadelphia wants. It's tension, it's risk, it's urgency, but it's also opportunity. Because everything happening this week, the roster moves, the snap adjustments, the injuries, the corrections on special teams, the defensive strategy, it all points to a team that understands the weight of this moment. A team that isn't just preparing for another Sunday. A team that's preparing to show the league who they really are. And now it's your turn again, Lions fans. With all of this on the table, with the roster shifting, the injuries looming, the matchups tightening, and the game approaching, what do you believe this team is truly made of as they step into Sunday night? Because the truth is, everything happening around this team right now feels like the build-up to something larger. When you look closely at the decisions, the rotations, the comments from the coaching staff, and even the way they're handling practice this week, you can sense how carefully Detroit is trying to position itself. This isn't a team hoping for things to fall into place. This is a team actively engineering the conditions it needs to win. And that's exactly why every detail we've talked about matters so much. Take Sam Laporta's situation. Everyone knows how valuable he is. Not just for receptions, but for how he manipulates defenses simply by being on the field. When defenses are doubling Amon-Ra St. Brown, and when they start shading extra help toward Jameson Williams on third downs, Laporta becomes the guy who stretches the defense horizontally, vertically, and structurally. His absence or limitation doesn't just remove a target, it shifts the entire defensive equation. That's why the signing of Anthony Firkser wasn't about replacing Laporta. It was about maintaining the balance within the offense so the architecture doesn't collapse when defenses shift their priorities. And on defense, the ripple effects are just as dramatic. The coaching staff acknowledging Roy Lopez's increased usage wasn't just transparency, it was a window into how they evaluate trust. Think about it. Shepard didn't talk about athleticism or potential when explaining Lopez's rise. He referenced Frank Ragnow, a respected voice, a veteran center, saying Lopez was the toughest nose tackle he faced. That's not small praise. That's a stamp of authenticity. And when a coach hears that, sees the film, and then watches Lopez consistently get into the backfield, it becomes impossible to ignore. It becomes a shift in the defensive foundation. This is why Tyreek Williams' reduced snaps aren't a signal of disappointment. They're a result of Detroit leaning into what's working right now. Williams is still an important part of the rotation, still part of the interior identity, but this moment belongs to the guy who's forcing his way into plays. And that's Lopez. It's rare to see a defensive tackle rotation with this much fluidity, and even rarer to see it work without ego. That's a sign of culture, a culture where impact determines opportunity. Then there's the matchup ahead, the one everyone's waiting for. The Eagles are a strange team because they don't always look dominant, but they still find ways to win. Even when they make mistakes late, even when the clock management goes sideways, they come out on top. That's why Detroit's approach has to be sharp, clean football, smart adjustments, no self-inflicted setbacks, because talent alone won't win this game. Discipline will, and that's where Detroit has struggled at times, especially on special teams. Those low kicks from Bates, the blocks, the poor lane discipline on kickoffs, this is the kind of stuff that gets exposed instantly when you're facing a team that thrives on hidden yardage. Dave Phipp calling it out publicly shows urgency. It shows accountability. It shows that Detroit knows exactly where the weaknesses are, and they aren't pretending otherwise. That honesty can be the difference between fixing a problem and letting it snowball under the Sunday night lights. And strategically, the conversation keeps coming back to how Detroit should defend Jalen Hurts. Because the danger isn't in the middle of the field. The danger is in those one-on-one isolation throws, those back shoulder balls, those big body contested catches the Eagles have feasted on. That's why playing man too often becomes a risk. Zone forces Hurts to process. Zone slows down his decision-making. Zone eliminates freebies. And if Detroit wants to keep this game under control, they need to make him read rather than react. Everything we've talked about, the Laporta situation, the surge of Roy Lopez, the reduced snaps for Tyreek Williams, the urgency on special teams, the defensive adjustments, all of it leads toward one defining truth. This week is revealing how Detroit handles pressure before the game even starts. And the way they navigate these challenges will say a lot about what they're capable of when the stage is at its brightest.